When Common Faith Divides is an examination of Orthodoxy, the sect of Christianity that spreads across Russia, Ukraine, and much of the Eastern world. But it's also a story that has become so much more salient and relevant since the time that I wrote it. Not only because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but also because of kind of greater introspection as I've looked into myself and seen how relevant this story is across the rest of the world. It is often, and very unfortunately true, that some of the things that greatly divide us, and perhaps most greatly divide us, are those same exact things that should most commonly unite us. Think of our very appearances, which for thousands of years have divided us to the tune of the utmost division. Think of our same lived experiences, which often divide us in our interpretations. Think of, in the United States, our common assent to democracy, yet our different interpretations and usurpations of it. Think across the world of different interpretations of religion and transcendentalism which have caused some of the greatest divisions, even though within those same sects and creeds there is often great commonality in a pursuit of peace and in a pursuit of understanding. Quite often, the things that should most unite us and present the greatest strains of commonality, compassion, and empathy are also those same things that create the greatest division. Nowhere is that more salient and relevant during today than in the states of Russia and Ukraine, where Orthodoxy, a version of Eastern Christianity, has become a tool not of unity, but of division. It has become something that is political and no longer very religious. It has become a tool of the state and not a form of the people. And in writing this work, I actually wanted to pursue a line of work that my professor, Dr. Catherine David, is quite passionate about. It was a risk that I kind of tried to calculate because this is something that she's done a lot of research on, and I wasn't sure if this final project for the year last semester as a research paper would be the most wise. As it was quite possible that she would know much more than I could ever research and would present some really good critiques to my paper. But in light of all of that kind of calculation, I decided to go ahead and write this piece because I found it to be something not only that would be super academically enriching, but also a really good opportunity to look at some common strains of thought that I've been thinking about, especially when it comes to unity and division, and how it's really often and throughout the world that things that are common end up dividing us. And I wanted to, within this piece, look at how the very thing dividing, in this case religion and orthodoxy to be specific, could also be used on its very flip side, on the other side of the coin, to actually present a tool for unity. Because often when things are dividing us, we look to other solutions and we look to outside external factors, kind of these exogenous factors, to attempt to kind of probe and dissect what it is that's causing division. Instead of that, I thought that it would be interesting to take a look at not only the problems presented by orthodoxy right now, but to see how orthodoxy could be the solution to its very own problems. If an adherence to the orthodoxy of orthodoxy, returning back to the faith's roots and its commonality, would be able to present any ray of hope in the situation in Russia and Ukraine. At the time I was writing this, the situation was one that was brewing and mainly limited to not exactly hot war and hot conflict. Of course, some clashes in the Donbass and cyber clashes, but nothing like what we're seeing today. But nowhere does this story become more important in this region than as we look to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine today. In the end, it is true that this war and this conflict is not the people's war. It's not the people's conflict, just as Russian and Ukrainian orthodoxy have not become the people's faith. They've become political agents. And in that, there is a need to return to, as I write in my paper, this sort of holy foolishness of orthodoxy, which are these incalculable and beautiful acts of kind of non-orthodoxy in orthodoxy. Which I love that paradox more than anything else I wrote in this paper, because we need that right now. We need acts of holy foolishness. We need priests and nuns across the entirety of the region to speak out and to jump forward for the people of a common faith, for those who desire parity, and for those who desire peace. In the end, orthodoxy doesn't preach war, does not preach nationalism, but it preaches peace. It preaches a greater understanding of what is to come and a God who is sovereign, not a leader who is, not states that are preeminent. And so in the end, this story teaches us that in returning to what it is that we truly believe, in learning to listen, learning to seek commonality, we find avenues and routes for peace that would otherwise seem non-existent. And so, as we look at our own lives, and as we look at this conflict unfolding, it's important to realize the commonalities that are tools for division only in the hands of political actors, but in the hands of the common people, these very same things become agents for peace.